And so we just have to find ways. There are ways to get out of those situations, but the number one way is to realize that you're not in a place that you're supposed to be. And that there is a way out. And then basically you just have to figure a way out. But it's culture. Now I'm going to give you the other culture. That's the culture of poor. Believing that this is just the way that it is, and I'm just trying to survive. I'm not really trying to get any better, okay? And I was talking to a tour guide, the guy that took us up to go see the monkeys. His name was Philip. And this guy was a Haitian, now living in the Dominican Republic. And he had a little girl. And he was working hard as a tour guide, trying to go to school to get an education in tourism. And he's explained to me even the school system they have there, that they have the regular school system, with the vocabulary and the mathematics, just a regular school system. But anything extracurricular, anything like computers or even sports or anything else, the parents have to pay extra for just so that child can have that exposure. And he was working to do that. And he was just so thankful. And even the tour job and the things that he was doing, showing us how they make coffees, doing this, and all the things that he was demonstrating, was like, man, really things that you really wouldn't want to do. But he was excited about doing these things. He was showing us, how they make coffee, how they take it out, they let it dry, and then they de-seed it, and then they roast it for like 45 minutes. Then they crumble it down into a powder. He was showing us the process, and then he told us a story about when he was growing up as a kid. And his grandmother, anytime they had to make coffee, she would pick him out of all his brothers, come to do all the work to make the coffee. And he said he was about 8, and he would get so upset and ask his grandmother, why is it me all the time? And she just said, it's just you. And she made him do it, made him do it. And he said later in life, he's 30 now, he said he went back to talk to that old grandmother, explained to her his job, and part of his tourism job was showing the tourists how to make coffee, and he was just so thankful that he understands now why she chose him to do that. And he was like breaking down a little bit. But he's striving. He was so proud. Look at my job. Look at my job. He was so proud of a job that most of us wouldn't even want to do. He had that light bulb go off. He had that epiphany. So he was trying to get to the United States, but he couldn't take his daughter because they wouldn't give her a passport. So he's going to try again next year, But he's not giving up. I remember as we were coming to this community, he was telling us, these kids are going to be running up, trying to get us to buy things from them. These real poor kids that live in some of these communities. He said, don't buy anything from them. He said the company that he works for doesn't want them getting close to the buses because they might get hit, they might get hurt by the bus. And that was that. And I remember coming up into this one little community, and these 2 little boys were coming up selling. I didn't even know what they were selling, but they were obviously extremely poor, just trying to sell something. They looked at him, he looked at them, and he turned his back on them. And I could tell it hurt him to turn his back on, but he just realized that is just the situation that they're living in. I'm sure it brought back memories from him for a situation he probably lived in his life when he was that age. But it's just a reality, and what I'm suggesting is we can change. We can change, but we have to change the culture. I came back, man, I was thinking a lot of thoughts about all this, man. And even from, as a Christian, I'm thinking, we're always saying how blessed we are, and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, sometimes we just might have been lucky, okay? To Dominican Republic, all the people down there, all the people that I was interacting with, so many of them looked just like me, and they were saying, you look Dominican, and we were just talking and joking, and we're just human beings that had particular paths and journeys that our ancestors took, and negative situations that brought them there and brought us here. And fortunately now, this is the country that I've been born in, but not by my own wit, not by my own good sense, not by my own skill or my own education or expertise. I just happened to be born here. I didn't choose. I was lucky. So I was even contemplating, the idea of blessed. What is blessed, We use it so often as a religious particular phrase or exhortation, or self-adulation. I'm blessed. I'm thinking that a blessing is simply that which, as a parent, you're able to pass down to your children, and that's what the blessing is. So I could see in these communities, like even in extreme poverty, the Dominican Republic, some of these, like Philip, who was on this tour bus trying desperately to raise his child right and to make money and to make more money to go to school and get a better education. And he said it was like, took hours to get to school. He'd get to school early in the morning, and then he wouldn't get till late at night, then have to take an hour or two bus trip. I mean, his situation was terrible, but he was still trying. Because he had that revelation, he had that epiphany, he had that blessing. His blessing, the blessing was the insight. Whatever that grandmother put into Philip was manifesting in his life, and even as a 30-year-old man, he recognized, even back from an 8-year-old child, the blessing that his grandmother, making him so mad, making that coffee every day, was the blessing that allowed him now in his life to begin seeing some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, some kind of fruit from that. And so I'm suggesting today that the blessing in our communities, the blessing will be what what we as parents can instill in our children. That's what the blessing is. And for many of us, what our parents instilled in us and what their parents instilled with them. And that often is the difference, even within the economic situation that we are, find ourselves in, even in our lives today, that we often take credit for. But the blessing is, that was the rationalizing process, the focus, the education, the culture that we were born into by no good sense of our own. So I'm just suggesting now, still through life, there are opportunities that we can change our culture, okay? And changing our culture, the only way to change a culture, I believe, is that we can't really hardly, unless there's some kind of cataclysmic, extreme situation that arises that wakes everybody up, that as individuals, as the light bulb begins to go off, we need to begin conducting ourselves, appropriately to begin to change the situation of our lives, and that will catch on and that will change the culture. But what I'm suggesting is keeping us from that is the alcohol and the drugs, which is part of the culture. So in order to have that epiphany, that light bulb, to get us out of the culture that we're in, we have to recognize that one of the culprits to keeping us in this culture is part of the culture, which is that buzz, okay? But we have to change this thing. And all through life, and so I'm not just speaking to you from nowhere, I can tell you, I'm that guy. I'm that guy. And when those light bulbs goes off, those epiphanies happen, those are adjustments to our culture, changes in our culture. When Obama became president, I just had a high school diploma. When Obama became president, this young black man, younger than me, Harvard graduate, now president of the United States, a light bulb went off in me that says, I got a high school diploma. At that moment, my culture was changed. I went to St. Clair College, got my associate degree. And continued. My culture was constantly adjusting. I was just going to stop at the associate just so I could say, well, I got a degree now. But then I went on to the bachelor's degree, and I was just going to stop at the bachelor's degree and say, well, I got a bachelor's degree now. Now I'm working on my master's degree. What I'm suggesting is the cultures have to be adjusted, looking at your situation and recognizing that this situation is not appropriate. This situation is not good enough. One of the ways I believe that we can, because it's very difficult. I used to tell these kids at juvenile detention for those 17 years I would go down there, is that sometimes you have to find a way to step outside of yourself and look at yourself and recognize that this is not it. This is not the way life is supposed to be. And at that point, come up with a plan. But that's not easy. As well, see, a lot of times the things that we inundate ourselves with, maybe some of the movies that we're watching, the Netflix and the binging and the concept and the reality shows, and we're just watching their lives without any concept or without any understanding that we have our lives too that need to be adjusted. And we have to come to that place to adjust. Otherwise, we're never going to improve. And looking at our children, I mean, is this really what you want for your kid's life? Man, I was the other day, man, this woman, I don't know what this kid, she was about maybe 7 years old, at a little cousin's house, and mother pulled up, get in the car, she was effing this, MFing this, just cussing this little child out. And I felt bad for that child. What's that child going to turn into? Probably the same thing her mama turned into when her mama was talking to her like that. We have to look at our lives and recognize that this is not what we want for our children. What I teach my children, what I teach my child and my children is that I want you to be better than me. Okay? And you must want your children to be better than you. And so my striving then is to be an example, to be the information resource, to be whatever it is my child needs so she can end up being better than me. She needs to be that for her child so they will end up being better than her, and so on and so on and so on. If you look at your child and recognize that you want your child's life to be better than yours, you're going to look at your life and try and recognize that this isn't good enough for them. You're just not going to be living for yourself, living for that buzz, living for that relationship, living for that party and all that stuff, because your child is falling through the cracks and they're going to be just like you or worse. Okay?